Always interesting to see these sort of interpersonal dynamics. We're about to see Joe Biden leave Washington and his political career behind him of many, many decades, only returning to politics after the first Trump administration. And John Carl, what did you make that, at least at the beginning? Because we've heard that it's tradition now that during these inaugural addresses, the incoming president generally references, the outgoing administration, at least thanks them for their service. None of them see eye to eye with these peaceful transfers of power, but I don't think we heard any of that today.
No, what you heard today is you heard Donald Trump describe Joe Biden's time in the White House as a, quote, horrible betrayal. Horrible betrayal. This wasn't the American carnage speech of 8 years ago, but it was a harsh condemnation of the outgoing president and a promise of a new age and the implicit, even the...
if you want to put the ABC feed back, so I can see that. Yeah, thank you. Let's have that on, please.
About 30 seconds.
Thank you.
Live from the Civic Media World Headquarters in Madison, Wisconsin, it's the Todd Allbaugh Show. And now, pursuing truth wherever it may lead, here's your host, Todd Allbaugh.
Across Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and streaming worldwide on the Civic Media app. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Todd Allbaugh, along with Mr. Aaron Zommers, our producer and engineer on the board. It is 6 past the hour of 12 noon on this Monday, January 20th, 2025. It is a great day to be a Wisconsinite. A little chilly out there. Big news day today. Going to get you involved and into all of it today as we go throughout the afternoon. Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. That's inauguration today as well. And can tell you that about an hour ago, Donald J. Trump, 8 years after becoming the 45th president of the United States, has now been sworn in as the 47th president of the United States. We continue to bring you ongoing coverage throughout this hour and into the afternoon here on the Civic Media Radio Network. Going to bring you some cuts of what Donald Trump said in his inauguration. Other people spoke as well. We'll bring you a couple of those cuts. Also following today, of course, as we said, is Martin Luther King Day, going to be marking and remembering that. TikTok is back on, at least for now. And we have a national championship college football game tonight. The Ohio State University and Notre Dame, and a what's worse in hour number 2 involving the cold weather. Again, we do have, in all seriousness, it's beyond just kind of chilly. The National Weather Service has put up an extreme cold weather warning for most of the state. The exception is the far southeastern part of Wisconsin. But for the vast majority of Wisconsin, an extreme cold weather warning is in effect until 9 a.m. So especially for pets, for some farm animals as well, and certainly for human beings, kids waiting for buses or that sort of thing. I know many school districts have canceled certain activities. Check your local listings around your area. But if you're going to be on the roads today, make sure you put in a kit, have a couple of bottles of water, a granola bar. You always say kind of a can or something with a small candle and matches. And, of course, make sure your cell phone is charged, your gas tank is full, and just use caution out there because things could get very dangerous weather-wise here on this Monday, January 20th. Glad to be back with you. Many thanks to Matt Rothschild for filling in on Friday. Zommers and I were away at a little business, as they say, required business meetings. We set things up for Civic Media in 2025. Mr. Zommers, always glad to be along with you. Happy Monday to you.
Happy Monday to you as well.
Busy day. So let's hop right into it. And joining us via phone, and we're so thankful to have him along, from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, two-time chair of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, an attorney, a great author as well, and to bring us to some perspective and analysis of both the inauguration and Martin Luther King Day, we welcome Matt Flynn back to the program. Matt, happy Monday, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good to be with you, Todd. It's a great show, and I think there's a lot to talk about today.
Right?
That's for sure.
There certainly is. We're going to get to the inauguration, and I get your take and analysis and perspective on some of this. There is a little bit of additional news happening today, and I wanted to get to that. First of all, courtesy of Axios, President Biden issued historic preemptive pardons for former NIAID Director Anthony Fauci, members of the House January 6th Committee, and others, including Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, former Republican congresspeople, granting them broad immunity before President Trump's White House return, now in the making. He also, just before the inauguration began, it was announced he did preemptive pardons for his immediate family, including his brothers and sisters and their spouses as well. And also making news this day, Vivek Ramaswamy is out as Donald Trump's so-called Department of Government Efficiency co-director. Ramaswamy, the entrepreneur who was tapped by the president-elect, now president, to co-lead his so-called cost-cutting efforts, along with Elon Musk, is leaving to run for governor of Ohio, according to a person close with him who was, of course, granted immunity to speak freely, as they say. And Matt, the final bit of breaking news, already the first casualty, perhaps, of the new Trump administration. Transportation Services Administration, TSA Administrator David Pesky is out. He was appointed by Trump, had hoped to return, and Pesky is retired Coast Guard admiral, but Trump saying no, he wants to make a change there. Matt Flynn, what do you make of those newsmaker stories before we get to the inauguration proper?
Well, one of the things that everybody is forgetting, I watched the Trump inaugural address, and what he did is, on the surface, he tried to pillage things from the Kennedy inaugural. Used the word vigor. You put a man on Mars instead of the moon, and he still said things like, "Let's take back the Panama Canal." But you got to remember one thing: there is a subtext of violence to Trump, not just the storming of the Capitol 4 years ago. But remember something. In the last election, November 5th, everybody said, "Oh, well, he won fair and square." Well, it likely didn't change the outcome, but there were bomb threats and death threats called in around the country to black voting areas, Indian voting areas in Arizona. There is a subtext. The Proud Boys marched with guns today in Washington, D.C., so make no mistake about it. What's going on, Trump, as long as he wins, he's fine. He smiles. If he doesn't win, the knife comes out. Be careful. Vivek Ramaswamy, look, Vivek Ramaswamy is a Hindu. He's a man of color. There's no way in Hades that he's going to make it in the Trump administration. Let's be blunt about it. As far as replacing people in the government, Trump is going to go through, and this business about merit that he talked about is all baloney. He's going to inquire, who did you vote for, and try to get rid of civil servants. So my message to everybody out there, Democrats, independents, and Republicans of good faith, is this: be on your guard. This guy has a subtext of violence going back at least 10 years. Be very careful with this guy.
Matt, I want to just mention here we continue to watch the proceedings of Washington, D.C. at this hour and give us a little historical perspective. You're a great historian and have a particular political history knowledge. We just saw now former President Joe Biden and the former First Lady Jill Biden walk out to what is typically Marine One, but of course now as a former president, it will not be called Marine One, the helicopter there. Now President Trump and the First Lady Melania Trump did walk the former president and First Lady out to the helicopter. And this all seems, Matt, to use a word, very normal. But, of course, 4 years ago, it was anything but.
Yeah, Trump is not normal. Biden had to issue these preemptive pardons today. And the only thing I would have done differently is do it several days ago, not just at the last minute. But Trump has threatened to prosecute the former chief of staff Miley, Anthony Fauci, everybody, Biden's family. And I think what Biden did was a stroke of genius. He said, okay, is that what you're going to do? Well, I'm pardoning everybody.
Right.
And that impression that's left in the American people is that he had to do it to prevent a Putin type of president coming in who would go after them unfairly. Now, there are judges. Remember, the six tarantulas on the Supreme Court, Eileen Mercedes Cannon, the she-wolf down in Mar-a-Lago, who, if is put in front of any of them, they will find weasel ways to try to turn around, but it puts an impediment in Trump's path to going after innocent people in a very authoritarian way.
Marine, typically called Marine One, the Marine helicopter now transporting former President Biden and Jill Biden, about to lift off from the grounds of the Capitol. And Matt, correct me, I believe it was former President Reagan who was the first on his way leaving Washington in 1989, in January of 89, that asked the pilot to circle the White House one final time. And those on board that were recording it said that Reagan looked out the window and said to Nancy Reagan, his wife, there's our little bungalow, honey. And they made one second final round. And it's kind of become tradition now as presidents leave and depart Washington. Of course, Trump opted to leave Washington on his own much earlier before then President Biden was sworn in. But we'll see, Matt. We'll be watching it and see if the Bidens take one last swing around the White House, as has been normal ever since Ronald Reagan.
Right. No, I think it's a great, and Ronald Reagan had quite a personality, and so there were always these quips, these ad libs from movies and that kind of thing, and it's, that's very, very neat. You also remember this: by 1989, he already had early onset dementia. Maybe he thought it was his bungle. Who knows what he thought? But anyway, the guy had a quick wit. I like that. The guy had a quick wit.
And doesn't matter whether it was H.W. Bush or Clinton or W. Bush or Obama.
Right.
They all have kept up that tradition of circling twice around the White House before that one final trip out of Washington. Matt, according to my records here, what I came up with, keep me honest on that, I believe with Donald Trump returning to the White House, he's the first president since Grover Cleveland. And none of us remember him, but Grover Cleveland to return to the White House a second time. And, certainly something that doesn't happen very often. But I heard someone today say that Mrs. Cleveland, before she left the White House the first time, told the White House staff, "Don't change a thing. We'll be back." Well, they were.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. It was Grover Cleveland. And what you may not remember, Grover Cleveland had a ravenous groin just like Trump. And there was a campaign statement in that particular thing where he lost one. And when he ran again, all of his opponent's detractors showed up and would shout, "Ma, Ma, where's Pa?" because he'd sired a child out of wedlock. And the other people would say, "Gone to the White House, ha, ha, ha." So, this is sort of, actually Grover Cleveland had more on the ball than Trump. I mean, he was a Democrat, for one thing. He was a good man.
Right.
And he wasn't a thief, and he hadn't betrayed us to the Russians. But other than that,
Mrs. Lincoln, how is the play?
Yeah, I'd like to play.
Matt, about a minute left here before our first break. A lot of folks like me and others will make a lot of this, but found it interesting in the seating. Of course, the events by Trump. This is Trump's doing. This is not anybody else. Trump decided to move it indoors. He said due to the cold weather. It certainly is cold there, not quite as bad as Wisconsin. Whether it was that or afraid of a small crowd size, we'll never know for sure. But so the stadium was limited. And apparently, according to reports, former mayor and Trump friend Rudy Giuliani got a seat in the rotunda inside the Capitol, but the Ukrainian ambassador did not. And also in row one, the richest men in the world, including Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and others. In row two, the cabinet. Pretty telling, Matt Flynn.
Yeah. Here's what happened. First of all, he moved it inside, not just because of the cold. It was much colder during the Kennedy inauguration. It was colder during the Reagan. But he did it, I think, was for security.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't want another bullet going by his earlobe.
Hey,
the second thing,
hang on to that thought, Matt. We'll be back with you in a second. President Biden making the second trip around the White House as he heads to Joint Air Force Base Andrews as he leaves Washington, D.C. We'll come back with Matt Flynn and more on the inauguration MLK on Civic Media.
Choice. Madison's real news and great conversation. 92.7 WMDX.
Hey, hon, have you been
been to Sugar River Pizza in Sun Prairie
Oh,
yet?
yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I know. I love the pizza.
Pizza is ridiculous. That crust.
Right, and they have
48 beers on tap and a great selection of wines.
And the atmosphere.
Not only is the restaurant gorgeous,
That room with the
giant windows that
Oh,
open, and they won a Best of Madison Gold Award this year.
I love Sugar River
Pizza on Cabela Drive in Sun Prairie.
You took the words right out of my
mouth.
Yep. SugarRiverPizza.com.
Oh, so you have heard of it.
Tons of glass artists share the same passion for eye-catching art as Ignite Glass and Gifts, so we're showcasing their work alongside our talented local artists and our in-house Ignite artists. The latest techniques, the hottest colors, and mind-blowing designs are here for you to enjoy. Madison's favorite for glass, gifts, and vape, Ignite Glass and Gifts, Monona Drive, Williamson Street, and Odana Road, plus IgniteGlassandGifts.com. Do your eyes a favor and see this stuff.
When you're having computer problems, you need a company you trust to get things working again, quickly and affordably. Madison Computer Works has been doing that for business and residential customers for decades. Our computer care plans take away the hassle of being without your computer or needing to bring it in for repair. Starting at only $10 a month, our local and friendly techs provide remote help and can fix most problems in just minutes. Call 608-231-8000 and sign up today.
On this side of the law, on that side of the law, who is right, who is wrong, who is for and who's against the law?
Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the
didn't
Civic
really
Media Radio
mean
Network. 21 now past the hour of 12 noon on Monday, January 20th, 2025. When you hear Johnny Cash, that usually means that Matt Flynn is not far behind. Such is the case. Two-time chair of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, an attorney, great author as well, here to give us some perspective and analysis on today's major news events, including the inauguration of Donald Trump as the 47th president now of the United States, sworn in an hour and 21 minutes ago, and also on Martin Luther King Day here across America. Can tell you now that Joe Biden has circled, his helicopter has circled the White House twice and is on his way to Joint Base Andrews, where he is going to depart Washington, D.C. Meanwhile, as we watch live video, President Trump and Melania Trump, along with Vice President Vance and his wife, are now in the Capitol going to the luncheon. Reports were that former Presidents Bush, Clinton, and Obama were going to skip the traditional presidential luncheon. And then, of course, about a 1:30 our time is when the traditional inaugural parade will take place. Again, reports are that some of those activities are being moved to the indoor arena there in Washington, D.C. We'll see whether Trump actually goes into the arena to review the parade. I guess it's going to come through the arena, I'm not sure, or be on the dais as built right outside the White House, which, of course, is tradition. Talking to Matt Flynn and Matt before the break there, talking a little bit about kind of the optics of this thing. Rudy Giuliani got a seat in the Capitol, but the ambassador to Ukraine did not. Also, this thing with all these oligarchs, the richest of people like Elon Musk, and of course you had Tim Cook from Apple and Jeff Bezos from Amazon. All these tech guys got rows in the front, or the seats in the front row. Trump's cabinet got seats in the second row. Wisconsin United States Senator Tammy Baldwin tweeting during the event saying that she was found interesting, to say the least, and disturbed, perhaps more importantly, to see this tech power, the tech bros, Matt Flynn, in row one.
Yeah, well, a couple of things, and the thing about the Ukrainian ambassador is very disturbing. Trump did that so as not to offend Putin. Rubio, his Secretary of State, gave an interview a couple of days ago in which he said Ukraine's going to have to give up land, conceded without negotiation that the Ruskies, the commie Ruskies, and you say they're not commies anymore, they absolutely are commies. Mm-hmm. Putin was a commie higher up for a long time in the Communist Party over there, and Trump is afraid of him for two reasons. One is because he's been funded by the Ruskies for about 20 years or more. Eric Trump said that to a journalist. Secondly, the Steele Report. Everybody goes, oh, the Steele Report. Let me tell you something. Trump is servile to Putin. He's afraid of Putin. And so he is about to stick a knife, he thinks, into Ukraine. And he said that the Ruskies can do whatever they want over there. Well, what about Poland? What about Lithuania? What about Finland? Let me tell you something. It is time that somebody has to get up on his hind legs in his own party and says, we're not going to put up with this isolationism. We are not going to cede Eastern Europe back to the Ruskies.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And I mean, you'll keep everybody honest on that. I mean, Putin is former KGB. That for people of a certain age, that means something. You know.
Right. Bad. Very bad.
Very bad. Very bad. Gonna get to phone calls in a minute, Matt. Again, if you want to join us, 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. But before we do, perhaps the bright spot of the day's activities so far is Minnesota U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar, who gave the opening address. She's on the bipartisan inaugural committee. And I think that she had some very telling words. Here's just a sample of Senator Amy Klobuchar's remarks this morning during the inauguration.
There's a reason this ceremony takes place at the Capitol. In other countries, it might be in a presidential palace or a gilded executive office building. Here, it is traditionally held at the Capitol, the People's House. It is a fitting reminder of the system of checks and balances that is the very foundation of our government, 3 equal branches of government. That is how, for nearly 250 years, our great American experiment, grounded in the rule of law, has endured. So, as we inaugurate a new president and vice president, let us remember that the power of those in this room comes from the
people, she said, to round it out. U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. Look, Matt, I know there are a lot of people out there that certainly, look, the person who I wanted to win didn't win. But there are people out there saying, don't watch it. We shouldn't be celebrating. We shouldn't be doing anything. I think Senator Klobuchar put it very well, that if others aren't going to respect the institutions of American democracy, it's up to us as individuals to keep that going. And as Joe Biden has said so very many times, look, democracy doesn't mean that you support it only when you win.
Right. No, and I agree with you. I must say partially, and let me tell you what I mean by that.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, at this time, that Trump did win, and all of the polling data shows that he cut into constituencies of the Democratic Party. It also shows that there were bomb threats and death threats made to black voting areas and indigenous Native American voting areas throughout the country. This is a violent party, and this is a violent individual. So when Amy Klobuchar says what she did, that's all very nice, but I think the Democratic Party is being too meek. You can say, sure, he got elected, so we're not going to do something armed with guns, but this crowd, led by him, tried to overturn the last election in this same space. And this crowd, somebody on their behalf made death threats and bomb threats at election time. We're not going to put up with that. Now, she doesn't have to do that. She can be Miss Nicey-Nice today. But the fact is that the chairman of the Democratic Party or somebody's got to say that. You can't just say, well, we have deference to this guy, he won, and okay, and there's seashells and balloons and kumbaya. That is not true. This is a violent party with violent leadership. The rank and file are not violent, but it's important that there be strong Democrats at the top who make it clear that we're not putting up with this.
One less than a minute, Matt, before we have to take a break here. We'll come back to the other side. But isn't this going to be one of the challenges for Democrats in America and others to say, how do you respect the institutions without endorsing the occupant?
Right. No, well said. And so here you have a guy who has not a single shred of commitment to democracy or anything that he pilfered at a John Kennedy speech that he gave today. Not a single bit. He's a draft dodger, and they had to pardon the chief of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff against prosecution by the draft dodger.
Right.
No. So we have got to say the truth, but we've also got to respect the institution.
Matt Flynn, always giving us the truth, unvarnished. We love it. Come back. Your phone calls on the other side. 855-752-4842. It's the Allbaugh Show on Civic Media.
News and great conversation. 92.7 WMDX. Your news, conversations, and a whole lot of fun. It's all on your local Civic Media radio station or the Civic Media app.
If you're like me, then you started your day with milk, either in your coffee,
Do you want
your
Freedom
cereal,
or another
in a
Johnny
glass.
Cash tune?
But have you ever stopped to think about how that milk gets from the farm to your fridge? I'm Stephanie Hoff for the Midwest Farm Report, and today we're going behind the scenes to look at the complex milk pricing system that affects the farmers, processors,
what's
and
the
total
John Phillips
supply
music?
chain. Changes are coming that will reshape the value of milk. Dana Cole is the Deputy Administrator of USDA's Agricultural Marketing Service. She gives us the gist on what the recent federal milk marketing order change
Yeah,
means
I'll try and
for
find
farmers.
that. I can't remember which one it
Is
is.
that El
The
Capitan?
industry as a whole, knowing that the effective date for the changes is
It's the
June
Washington
1st,
Post
so
March.
Be sure
Oh,
that
that's-
milk that's marketed in June is they need to be thinking about that if they're using any kind of risk
Yeah.
management
Let's get back
tools.
with that.
Part
Okay.
of the delay in the implementation is to provide those
As
producers
performed by
an
the
opportunity
United States
to
Army
analyze
Field
where they're
Band.
at on the
Oh,
risk management
fantastic.
tools they're using and how they
Unless
might
I can
want
find one
to
by
move
the
forward. And
Wisconsin
that
Air
is
National
true as
Guard.
well with the composition factors that'll be implemented on December 1st.
Dates to remember, according to Dana Cole. She's the Deputy Administrator for USDA's Agricultural Marketing Service. We'll take a look at more farm news next. Make the best of wintertime fun at the 4th Annual Sun Prairie Frozen Fest, January 29th through February
So we'll
2nd.
we'll
presented
come
by
back
the
with
Bank
that,
of Sun Prairie.
and then
It's
I'll
a
call
fantastic
for
opportunity to enjoy a variety of winter activities like the Puzzle Contest, Cardboard Sled Classic, Winter Beer Garden, Bonfire, Hibernation Hustle 5K, Pancake Breakfast,
Actually, how long is the
and
cut of the
77th
swearing
annual
in Trump?
Groundhog Day prognostication. For more about
50
Frozen
seconds.
Fest, log on to cityofsunprairie.com.
Come on along. We're headed to the Canadian Rockies. I'm Pam Yankee.
All right, we'll come in with the Mars music. I'll set it up. I'll call for that, and then we'll bring that in.
It's 50 seconds, but we would only actually need like 35 to 40 because the rest is just a pause.
Oh, okay, yeah. Let's fast forward. We'll just use that 35 or 40 then.
For award-winning wines at Lulu Island Winery. Then we ferry to Vancouver Island to visit a bison ranch and a dairy farm. Go to holidayvacations.com, enter keyword Pam to get a brochure or watch a travel show.
Markets are closed for the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. And more agribusiness news this
What he sounds
week.
like now is a lot more what I expected
Congratulations
earlier.
to Paul Fetzer.
Murderers. You know, when you get the death sentence in the United States, you have to be bad because they don't give it much. And he pardoned almost everybody having a death sentence. And if you went through the crimes that were committed, you wouldn't even believe them, the level of...
Paul Fetzer.
There you go.
You can find more farm stories
And so
at
on, and so
forth. And so on, and so
MidwestFarmReport.com.
forth.
It's just-
And while
Sorry,
you're there,
is
check out
Facebook
our
down? We're not
podcast
streaming on
page. The
Facebook?
top downloaded story this past week tells us how cheese
I will
brine
try
is a
to
valuable tool on Wisconsin roads.
get it
For the
to
Midwest
stream
Farm
again,
Report,
but yeah.
I'm
All right.
Stephanie Hoff.
You can always continue the conversation on social
We are
media.
on the
Share your thoughts when
WMDX
you find
Facebook,
and follow
but
Civic Media on
not on
Facebook,
yours.
X,
Not
and
our
Instagram.
actual
With
Facebook
high temperatures
page.
barely climbing above zero,
I'm gonna try and
winds
re-add
whipping
it.
out of the
All right.
northwest, it's creating dangerous wind chills, where highs today are really feeling more like 25 below. A cold weather advisory is in
Being
effect
censored
now.
by,
and switches to an extreme cold warning overnight tonight,
Zuck.
where to be feeling
Right.
40 below. I'm meteorologist
No, he was
Brittany
too busy
Merlot.
staring at
It's
Jeff
0
Bezos'
at our
wife and trying to
studio.
look down her
I
shirt.
saw that. I saw that. That was
on air.
hilarious.
Stephen Aronson from Wisconsin Knitwear, based in Milwaukee, knithats.com. Our own Beyond the Cheese.
There we go. Now we should be live on the actual Facebook page.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. I was so excited you called.
Oh, he's calling Liz Cheney a crying lunatic
We will be giving
and
some
crying
of these
Adam
away.
Kinzinger.
Absolutely.
In the next
Never
couple
saw
of
the guy
weeks.
not crying.
Nair on air, weekdays at 11 on
Okay.
92.7
Okay, let's get you back to bed,
WMDX
Grandpa.
and the Civic Media app. The John and Gordy Show.
Good morning.
Oh, never
Pam.
mind.
He's
Facebook still is not
reporting
working.
On the Green and Gold, a new film that's
I'll try
out there.
again in a
You're
second.
at the
What?
premiere.
I'll try again, but Facebook decided
It's a
it's not
story
working.
about a dairy farmer bets on
30
the
seconds.
Packers
All right,
to
thank
win the Super Bowl.
Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. 34 minutes past the hour of 12 noon on this Inauguration Day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Monday, January 20th, 2025, along with Aaron Zommers on the board. Todd Allbaugh here. Little Washington Post March, Mr. Zommers, there by the Army Band, was that?
Yes, the Army Field Band. And, you know, it's not a patriotic day without some Sousa.
Exactly. And no better person to have join us here but a United States veteran, a Navy veteran, also a two-time chair of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, an attorney and author, giving us a perspective and analysis on the day. Matt Flynn. Matt, thanks for your service. And no matter what's happening politically, I never get tired of hearing a military band.
Well, I agree. And you know, the other thing is, and I've said this before, I got to say it again on a day like this. On the ship I was on, there were Democrats and Republicans. There were Southerners and Northerners. There were guys from Wisconsin like me and guys from Mississippi. We all worked together. We were friends, played cards when we were underway and had a little free time. We stood watch together. We went on liberty together. We're Americans. And that spirit has been dissipated with the split that we've seen in our politics over the last, ever since Donald Trump reared his head, almost 10 years ago. That's got to stop. We're all Americans.
I thought it was, and by the way, President Trump now is in the halls of the Capitol giving a much more partisan speech right now, flanked by Speaker Johnson. We're not going to take that, but I just want to let you know what was going on to our listeners. And also, now former President Biden and former First Lady Dr. Jill Biden have landed at Joint Base Andrews and are going to make a final address there before hopping on the plane and going home. But I thought, Matt, I want to get your take on this. Last week, President Biden, then President Biden, gave his commander-in-chief address. And he warned not only those assembled, but I really took it to mean all of our military. And he said this very seriously, to remember your oath. Remember your oath. I thought that was an important moment that kind of got overlooked.
Absolutely. The truth is that our military academies for our officers, the Annapolis, West Point, the Air Force Academy, the Coast Guard Academy, drills into our future officers that civilians run our military and civilians run our country. And what he was trying to warn them, and he didn't do it explicitly, was that you have a regime coming in. Remember something. Tommy Tuberville, at Trump's direction, stopped all flag officer appointments for 10 months. We lost admirals, we lost generals who just retired and said, the hell with this. He will tamper with the military. He is a Russian asset. Keep that in mind. He's a Russian asset. And so what's happening is what Biden said is, remember, gentlemen and ladies, your oath. When you went to Annapolis or West Point, you took an oath. And that oath is to the Constitution, not to Donald Trump. That's what he was saying.
855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Let's go to the phone lines. Mark in Prairie du Sac. Mark, thanks for holding on. Understand you have a question about one of the announcements that Trump confirmed during his inaugural speech today.
Yeah, apparently he said he executive order to end birthright citizenship. And I don't know quite how it's worded, but on the face of it, that would be, to my mind, unconstitutional because anybody who's in this country, unless you're the scion, being born of an ambassador or something like that, you're subject to U.S. law. So therefore, if a woman is in this country and gives birth to a child, and she just happens to be somebody undocumented immigrant that came over and gives birth to a child, that child is a citizen of the United States because that woman is actually under the jurisdiction of U.S. law. Otherwise, she couldn't be arrested and deported because she is under the jurisdiction of the United States. Am I wrong in that assertion?
Matt?
Yeah, you are right, except I'm going to tell you how the six tarantulas on the Supreme Court could change that and just say it was constitutional. The 14th Amendment was directed towards the children of slaves who had been brought here from Africa. When they were kidnapped in Africa, they were born in Africa. And so the South said they're not citizens. But then they had kids, and most of the slaves alive in 1865 to 1870 were the children of people who had been born in Africa. They were born in the United States. So the Congress said, passed it, and then it was ratified as the 14th Amendment, that anybody born in the United States subject to our jurisdiction and laws is a citizen. Now, if the ambassador from Mexico and his wife are living in D.C., she gives birth to a child, that child is not a citizen because he's the ambassador. He was sent by Mexico, and we accepted him, and so therefore he's subject to the laws and jurisdiction of Mexico. Now, if he commits murder or something here, there'll be a diplomatic row and all that. What Trump is saying, and he's trying to do it by executive order, he's trying to set up a lawsuit for the tarantulas, the 6 of them. He's trying to say is, well, people who come in illegally, they're not legal, they are still subject to the laws of Mexico or the Middle East or wherever they're sneaking in from. And so therefore, they are still now they're subject to our laws if they commit a crime, but we didn't let them in. They came in on their own. And so therefore, anybody, now I'll tell you a funny thing, Marco Rubio's parents came in. I do not know if they were legal or not. So I'm not saying they were or weren't. But I'll tell you what, we'll throw goddamn Marco out. He's going to be a lousy Secretary of State anyway. And so the truth of the matter is,
Go on.
There's the game plan for the 6 tarantulas to try to fool around and change 160 years of jurisdictional jurisprudence.
To your point, Matt, our friend Stuart Stevens, like myself, former Republican, worked at high levels of Republican presidential politics, left the party like me, and is one of the principals at the Lincoln Project. He tweeted out on Twitter, X now, during the speech when Trump said he wanted to do this by executive order. He says, quote, birthright citizenship? If birthright citizenship did not exist, J.D. Vance's wife would not have been a U.S. citizen when they were married. Her parents were not U.S. citizens when she was born. She is an American because of birthright citizenship. Is J.D. Vance's wife so dangerous we need to end birthright citizenship? Is she that much of a threat? I don't think so.
Well, the answer is yes, she is. Except that that's just peculiar to her. Get her out. Get her and Rubio out. You can send them on a small plane and get them the hell out.
All right.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned.
855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Joe, listening here on WMDX in Madison. Always a pleasure, Joe. What say you?
Thanks very much. It's great to hear from you, Matt, and I would very much like to hear your reaction to a premise that I'm suggesting. You had said many times that Trump behaves, we don't know for sure he's a Russian asset, but he sure acts like it in terms of how he constructs his life and in terms of there are very significant clues that would attest to that. Russia has for a long time been interested in doing whatever they could to fracture the United States. So whether it's mucking about in our elections, whether it's advancing ideas that they should get Alaska back, whether it's playing on the global stage to thwart American interests. And it occurs to me that one of the things that they've been very big on is trying to separate out, trying to break up the states, basically. And California being the biggest state and the one that has the biggest impact, I see a situation here that's going to blow up amazingly. Speaker Johnson has said that he wants to hold hearings on whether California has the right to any federal relief with the fires that have beset that state. He said they want to look, it's conditional on whether they had the right logistics and oversight of this or that. I see 8 million years of hearings about water pressure in hoses in various neighborhoods in California. And nobody else has had to have, no other state has had to have that exhaustive look. For example, North Carolina, did they have to have some sort of exhaustive look as to how well prepared they were for hurricanes coming through? My question for you is, if California contributes, Rockefeller Institute of Government said that in 2022, California contributed $83 billion more in taxes to the federal government than it received from aid from the federal government for its needs. What happens if Gavin Newsom says, to heck with this, if you're going to blow off, let's say, $20 billion in aid that we are entitled to, that everybody else, every other state would have received, we will cut $20 billion out of what we send to the federal government. Can you talk me through how that would work? I'd be very curious. Thanks, Matt. I really appreciate it.
No, that's actually a brilliant analysis, which I always expect when you call, Joe. Here's the law, and here's the reality of this. We are so partisan, and the Russians, you're right, are doing everything they can to divide us. Lincoln said, "The house divided itself cannot stand," and our enemies know that the only way we can be beaten is through division, and that has been going on for 10 years. Now, it wasn't just California. Remember when Hurricane Sandy came through, the southern states, the red states, would not vote for aid for Hurricane Sandy because it's New Jersey and New York. And what happened is Boehner, the speaker, had to put together a coalition of Democrats and Republicans and ram it through, but that ended up costing him the speakership. Mike Johnson is submissive. He's a servile little worm, servile to Trump. He'll do whatever Trump wants. So when they are putting on these hearings, who is paying for the immediate cleanup and the immediate restoration cost? I think it's actually a very smart idea, if I'm Gavin Newsom, to say we're going to pay for it out of federal revenues that we're entitled to, and so it's probably going to be $20 billion. It could be $30 billion. It could be $19 billion. We don't know what it is. What will happen then is Trump will have to go to tax court to bring an action against California, and that'll go with original jurisdiction right to the Supreme Court, and the tarantulas will have to decide. I'm going to give you the full game plan. Tarantulas will have to say, okay, we're going to side with Trump. At that point, Newsom still doesn't send it. Now, what does Trump do? Does he send federal troops? Does he federalize the National Guard? Russia would love this. What you have highlighted, and everybody listening to this has got to understand, we are being divided by foreigners in Russia, China, Iran, everywhere else, who are trying to defeat us from within. And when Trump has been a signal agent of that, he is the one that raised the issue, and subservient little worm like Mike Johnson immediately went along with it. So I would absolutely do that. The other thing is, even if it went to the tarantulas, at some point there'll be such public pressure, you have to build it up, because these people will do what they did at Sandy Hook. And unlike then, when we had Boehner as a speaker, we have Mike Johnson.
We're talking with Matt Flynn, two-time chair of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, an attorney and author here for his perspective and analysis on the day's events. Matt, I want to play you a quick cut here and get your perspective on this. This was Donald Trump during his inaugural speech about an hour and a half ago, talking about the scales of justice.
Our sovereignty will be reclaimed. Our safety will be restored. The scales of justice will be rebalanced. The vicious, violent, and unfair weaponization of the Justice Department and our government will end.
Matt, you were a longtime attorney. I want to put this through the lens of Wisconsinites, because we had a story last week talking about folks who are here undocumented in Wisconsin, and the highest employers of those folks are agriculture and hospitality. And now Trump is talking about something called the 1798 immigration law, the Alien Enemies Act, to, quote, eliminate the presence of all foreign gangs and criminal networks, unquote. About a minute here, we'll pick it up on the other side. But what does this actually mean in terms of how this is going to affect Wisconsinites?
Well, undocumented workers milk well over half the cows in the state. A cow has to be milked once or more a day. Christmas,
usually twice
Easter,
and three times, yeah.
Yeah, 2 or 3 times or whatever. You know, I haven't milked one recently, okay? The point is, they got to be milked, okay? They got to be milked.
I was a farm boy, so I get it,
yeah. Yeah, you ain't milking them. You're a farm boy, but you're a radio guy.
Right.
Somebody got to milk them, and these are undocumented immigrants. Right. The truth of the matter is, I think what Trump's going to do is make a big bluster and start out in a handful of felons and people like that. But the agriculture industry, are you kidding me? If you go down to Greene County in Monroe, where my wife's from, and you yank everybody off these farms, these farmers are going to be at their sons. They'll say, get back here and milk the cows. The guy say, hello, I'm up in Madison. I got a job. I'm the CFO of a company. So come on, give me a break. So, but was more ominous. Remember one thing. Everybody copies our Constitution on the form, on the surface. China, Russia, they have trials. They're all fake.
Right.
And he's talking about not weaponizing it. He's talking about fake Russian type stuff.
Back with more about MLK Jr. on the other side. It's the Todd Allbaugh Show. Matt Flynn, right here on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Real news and great conversation. 92.7 WMDX.
Are you looking to kick up your nighttime entertainment? Good times.
Somebody tweeted out what you were watching. They said, this is the real inaugural address.
I mean, from what I've been listening, I was like, oh yeah, that's the stuff he actually wanted to say, not the stuff his handlers forced him to.
Plus live music and meet all your friends at the Lazy O for the big game. The Lazy Oaf Lounge, 1617 North Stoughton Road in Madison. Follow them on Facebook or at lazyoaflounge.com.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. New presidents often use day one executive orders to move their policy agendas forward. What are the different kinds of presidential orders? What are their limitations? And why do presidents use them? Since John F. Kennedy, presidents have averaged 269 executive orders over their terms. Since 1907, each order received a number, and all are cataloged at the National Archives. There are three different kinds of orders, according to Dr. Burt Rockman of Purdue University. Executive orders are written orders, usually on more weighty issues such as national emergencies or setting uniform policy for government action. Written presidential memoranda authorize or freeze projects, share official positions with Congress, outline treaties and international affairs, and other policy matters. Memoranda are not required to be published or public. A third type are proclamations, such as a proclamation celebrating Juneteenth. Pardons and clemency are not executive orders, but rather a separate power granted by the Constitution. Gridlock resulting from
Well, you wonder why I always dress in black, why you never see bright colors on my back, and why does my appearance seem to have a somber tone? Well, there's a reason for the things that I have on. I wear the black for the poor.
Welcome back
and
to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. Now at 8 before the hour of 1 o'clock. Coming up in hour number 2, a little what's worse for you, having to do with our chilly temperatures. Also, talk a little bit more about today's events in Washington, D.C., and have a little preview of The Ohio State University taking on Notre Dame for the national championship game tonight. Lots going on. We can tell you as we watch the live coverage on the split screen. Very interesting. Matt Flynn joins us again, two-time chair of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin and an attorney, great author for perspective and analysis. On one side of the screen, Matt, now former President Trump and Dr. Jill Biden, now former President Joe Biden and Dr. Jill Biden taking off on what normally is called Air Force One. It's the same plane, but the moniker, of course, is reserved only for the sitting President of the United States. They're about to take off from Joint Base Andrews. And on the left-hand side, you have Trump in the Capitol continuing with what now people on social media are saying is the actual inaugural he wanted to give, which is this freelancing stuff and just attacking Hillary Clinton and petty and trite. And it's quite stark, Matt Flynn, the split screen.
Yeah, and I've been looking at this, and the thing about this guy, he is not entirely the elevator doesn't go to the top floor on this guy, emotionally and psychologically, okay? And the fact is that he had his talking points, and his handlers made him give that other speech where he saw a lot of stuff from John Kennedy. But this is him venting. I mean, he's just flat out venting and lying, continuously lying. And he's cheapening the office. He's cheapening himself. And everybody's licking their chops internationally going, we can divide this nation because we have a Russian agent in the White House.
Matt, let's talk about someone who actually helped unify this country, Martin Luther King Jr. It is MLK Day across the United States, a federal holiday. Many states have it as a state holiday as well. Appropriate that we pause and reflect. Matt, as someone who came up through the Democratic Party and worked on civil rights issues, what's your remembrances of Martin Luther King Jr. and what does this day mean to you?
It means a lot, and I never had the honor or pleasure of meeting him, but I was struck. I was when he and the Kennedys first interacted, and Bobby and John stuck up for him in the early '60s. I was 16 or 17 when he was assassinated in '68. I was 21, and the one feature about him that always stuck with me was how much courage this guy had.
Mm-hmm.
He was going through the South, and you may say, okay, Brian, I can go through the South. Well, let me tell you something. Going through the South in 1962, 63, 64, going to a bus stop, walking along the street, this is pre-civil rights. And people, when I was in the Navy in Little Creek, Virginia, the amusement park hadn't been desegregated till 2 years before I got there. This is a different terrain. And when he went through there, nobody would have prosecuted anybody who attacked him. He had no security, and he walked freely around there. And then sadly, when he went to support the sanitation workers in Memphis, because 2 of them got crushed in a garbage truck.
Mm-hmm.
They were sitting there, and somebody set it in motion, and they got crushed. So he goes down there to object to this and say they need higher wages, and somebody shoots him. This guy, the one issue about him that I remember the most as a kid was how much courage he had.
Yeah. It feels like, that's beyond feels like, you just know that we need more people like Martin Luther King Jr. today. There'll never be another one of him, of course. But as you survey the landscape, Matt, is there anybody that sticks out? You say, you know what, that individual might have what it takes to at least rise in part to the level of MLK in 2025.
Well, one of the things about MLK, Martin Luther King, was that the issue that he was exemplified, which was racial reconciliation, was the most important issue at the time, and it still is. So I can't identify anybody in the civil rights movement that has that stature. There are other people who have shown courage, and this is somebody entirely different, but somebody like Liz Cheney, who she gets death threats, her kids get death threats. Mm-hmm. She has stood up to enormous pressure. I admire her. I admire Adam Kinzinger. I admire people in the Democratic Party. I admire Joe Biden. Joe Biden stuck to his knitting. He pushed through a great agenda, a Roosevelt type of legislative agenda. We have heroes like that now, but they're not. They don't require. They require courage. Liz Cheney requires courage, but they don't quite require the courage of, say, a Nelson Mandela or Martin Luther King, where they faced physical murder by just walking through a street or into a store.
Matt Flynn, 90 seconds left. I'll give it to you. Final thoughts on this January 20th inauguration day and Martin Luther King Day.
It's an unbelievable coincidence that they're both the same day because the men involved are so different. And so Martin Luther King, courage, that's what I remember, and reconciliation, which is what we need. But with Donald Trump, remember one thing. Even though a spoken speech can sound good all of a sudden, deep down inside, he and some of his party will use violence to keep power. They will use violence. They did it on January 6th. They have done it in general. There were bomb threats throughout black and indigenous voting precincts this last time around, November 5th. Be very, very careful. Do not be dissuaded. There are some good Republicans. Republican voters are Americans. Half of the ship I was on were Republican voters, and half of them were Democratic voters. But their leadership, it's not the old Republican Party. This is a cult of Trump, and Trump is a cult of Putin. Be very careful that our foreign adversaries don't continue to try to divide us.
Matt Flynn, you always admonish us, remind us that you're not woke if you don't know history. You're not woke if and until you know history. You always bring it to us, and we appreciate that. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Always a pleasure. Matt Flynn, come back for hour 2 of the Todd Allbaugh Show, including What's Worse. Talk a little bit about cold weather and a national championship tonight on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Real news and great conversation. 92.7 WMDX. John Peterson and Gordy Young.
On our next show, Pat McBride will tell us some unbelievable Wisconsin sports stories.
And the Humane Society will continue their dating game for all those lovable pets.
The John and Gordy Show. Weekday mornings 6 till 8.
Equability offers custom-tailored clothing for those with dexterity or mobility challenges. Plus, first-time shoppers get 10% off. Use code CIVIC10 at checkout. Visit equability.co, equability.co to make your clothes easier to wear today.
Listen to the John and Gordy Show weekdays right here on WMDX, sponsored by Verlo Mattress. Sleep better, dream bigger on a handcrafted, locally made mattress. Find them on Madison's East and West Side or online at verlo.com.
Enjoying this local program? Find the complete Civic Media lineup at civicmedia.us or the Civic Media app. This is 92.7 WMDX Columbus, Madison's home for real news and great conversation. A Civic Media station.
ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. President Trump and J.D. Vance sworn into office in the Capitol Rotunda. The 47th president in his first speech that followed vowed to usher in a new golden age.
Above all, my message to Americans today is that it is time for us to once again act with courage, vigor, and the vitality of history's greatest civilization.
President Trump also pledging to reverse the Biden administration's executive orders. ABC's Karen Travers has more on the day.
We expect him to do some signing ceremonies still up at the Capitol and then head down to Capital One Arena, where a lot of his supporters have been standing in lines for hours to get in. That's where the parade was moved. They took the outdoor parade. They're going to do an indoor celebration there. The president and first lady are expected to stop by. And then he's going to be here at the White House. And that's when we expect some of those executive orders to be signed.
Former President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden were outside the Capitol and boarded a military helicopter departing Washington, D.C. This is ABC News.
This is your local Civic Media radio station. Want to hear even more? Anytime? Find all of it at civicmedia.us.
For 92.7 WMDX News, I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. Over the weekend, protesters braved the cold and filled the state capitol in protest of the new presidential administration. There were more than 300 local versions of the People's March across the country, formerly the Women's March back in 2017. One of those marches was Saturday here in Madison. Hundreds pushed for the rights of women, workers, trans folks, and immigrants, and justice in housing and for the climate. It was so cold, they moved inside the Capitol Rotunda, where some reports said their chants echoed off the walls. And the fundraiser for the Abundant Life Christian School community just keeps growing. McFarland's American Legion Post 534 raised $3,500 to go into that account. They host a meat raffle every third Sunday of the month, and this one was to benefit ALCS. They had a bigger crowd than usual there to donate to the cause. Meanwhile, Madison's own chocolate shop held a fundraiser over the weekend, too. On Sunday, 50% of all sales went toward that ALCS recovery fund. I'll reach out to the United Way to get an updated total, but at last check, I think that fund should have at least $400,000 now. And gas prices are still under $3 a gallon here in Wisconsin, but tariffs could change all that. Here's Melissa Kay.
Gas prices rose 13.3 cents during the last week. The average across the state is $2.93 today. This is 9.5 cents higher than a month ago and over 22.5 cents per gallon higher than this time last year. The national average also rose during the last week, with that average at $3.09 today. Oil prices have reached their highest level since July, driving the national average up. Officials at Gas Buddy say with President Trump's inauguration this week, there could be price impacts depending on the executive orders he's preparing to sign. They will be closely monitoring potential impacts with the threat of tariffs and possible retribution from Canada. Higher prices could begin in a few weeks anyway, with the traditional seasonal rise.
I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. You're listening to 92.7 WMDX News.
The Bucks dismissed the 76ers. Hi, I'm Mike Clemens with sports. In the NBA, the Bucks with another win at home, 123-109 over the 76ers. Now, although they won by 14 points, head coach Doc Rivers and why he wasn't pleased by the Bucks' performance.
Yeah, I didn't think we attacked much at all. Honestly, we walked the ball up the court. Every time we ran the ball and advanced the ball, we got whatever we wanted. So it was just one of those games we couldn't find our pace. And yet we still won.
Chris Middleton, able to play 25 minutes, scoring, had 13 points and 8 assists, and was pleased they won those 4 games in a row at home.
We just want to take care of home court. We dropped a couple games at home earlier this month or last month that we thought we should have won, but to come and take care of home court, the fashion that we did, I'll take it.
Men's college basketball, UWM losing to Robert Morris University, 81-79. 19 turnovers for the Panthers. That was their first loss at home since last March. With sports, I'm Mike Clemens.
Local radio for you and your community. It's Civic Media's mission with stations across Wisconsin. Find your favorites at civicmedia.us.
With high temperatures barely climbing above zero and winds whipping out of the northwest, it's creating dangerous wind chills, where highs today are really feeling more like 25 below. A cold weather advisory is in effect now and switches to an extreme cold warning overnight tonight. We're to be feeling 40 below. I'm meteorologist Brittany Merlot. It's 0 at our studios.
Probably don't need to keep that up anymore, right?
No, let's keep it for a little while.
Okay.
It reminds you, hey, bang on the hood of your vehicle before starting your engine this winter. It's that simple. You can save a cat's life.
This is Zombers doing.
With frigid temperatures, a little shelter, some cats are going to try to find a way to keep safe and warm, including, guess where? Under car hoods and in the wheel well of your vehicle. So before climbing into your vehicle and starting the engine, bang on the hood and give cats an opportunity to flee. To learn more, visit giveshelter.org.
The Maggie Dawn Show.
Pete Hegseth confirmation hearing.
I've never disparaged women serving in the military.
Except for, the podcast interview in late November of 2024 when he said women in combat weaken the military. Except for that, Pete, did you get body snatched? Are you not the same guy that sat down in the Brosphere podcast?
The Maggie Dawn Show.
30 seconds.
Weekdays from 2 till 4 on your local.
Live from the Civic Media World Headquarters in Madison, Wisconsin, it's the Todd Allbaugh Show. And now, pursuing truth wherever it may lead, here's your host, Todd Allbaugh.
Across Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and streaming worldwide on the Civic Media app. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Todd Allbaugh, along with our producer and engineer, the fantastic Mr. Aaron Zommers on the board. It is 6 past the hour of 1 o'clock. Welcome into hour number 2 of the big program. It is Monday, January 20th, 2025. It is a great day to be a Wisconsinite here in Wisconsin, as long as you're indoors, Mr. Zommers. It's chilly.
So I showered this morning, as is a good thing to do, before you go to work. And I dried my hair with a blow dryer, and still my hair froze solid walking to my car.
Zommers has, for those who don't know on this stream, he has about shoulder length hair. He has long flowing locks, unlike me. And by the way, coincidence or not, all the tech bro boys, Zuckerberg, Bezos, Musk, are sitting behind Trump for the inauguration today, and the same time our Facebook page has gone down. We're trying to stream normally because I'm like, well, our stream seems a little low. There is medication for that, by the way. But the stream seems a little low, and then it turns out, no, we're not streaming on the Todd Allbaugh Show Facebook page. I believe we are on the Civic Media page, right?
That is correct.
All right. So if you normally watch,
we're on the WMDX, the 92.7 WMDX.
WMDX here in Madison. So if you normally watch this on the Todd Allbaugh Show and you want to, I put on a suit jacket for today, by the way. But you can stream us live right now on the WMDX. Look for WMDX on Facebook. We'll see whether we're being penalized by Zuckerberg intentionally or what's going on. But
that may be the case. Hard to say.
We're technology, But in all seriousness, this is beyond what we're experiencing today and into tonight, beyond just cold weather. National Weather Service has actually put out an extreme cold weather warning for the majority of Wisconsin, the exception being the far southeast counties of Milwaukee, Kenosha, and Racine. But otherwise, the majority of the rest of the state under a cold weather warning until 9 a.m. tomorrow. So just make sure that, turn the heat up a little bit if you can so your pipes don't freeze for people kind of out in more rural areas. Or if you have an apartment that's not well insulated, open the doors kind of below your sink to make sure that there's warm air going in there. Obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but it's a good reminder because we haven't had these cold snaps in quite a while that, even if you're going to take a short walk, whether it's walking the dog or doing quick chores outside, put a stocking cap on your head, especially for folks like me who don't have a lot up there anymore for insulation, because you lose a lot of your heat off the top of your head. Gloves, fingers can get frostbite in just a couple of minutes. And especially when the wind blows, with the wind chill as well. Make sure you have the proper clothing on. The vehicles have a full tank of gas before you hit the road. Make sure you put a blanket and some extra things in the car, and make sure your cell phone is fully charged as well. So extreme cold weather warnings for the majority of the state until 9 a.m. tomorrow. We're going to continue to update you throughout this hour on new happenings of the inauguration in Washington, D.C. Again, Donald Trump was sworn in just after 11 o'clock our time as the 47th president of the United States. The speech was not quite as dark and ominous as his first one 8 years ago, although he made some pretty remarkable announcements during the speech. One of them, he was officially going to change the Gulf of Mexico, the name, to Gulf of America. Of course, that can't really happen unless Mexico and other places decide on that. But also announced with full-throated voice that he's going to, quote, take back the Panama Canal, unquote. And look, there's a lot of bluster. A lot of this is distraction. But I think when the sitting now president and commander-in-chief talks about taking territories, you can't totally disregard that either. So we're going to talk about a couple more things from the inauguration, keep track of what's happening. Now, former President and Dr. Jill Biden have left Washington, D.C. at Joint Base Andrews. They gave a brief remark there, primarily for White House staff. Their closest advisors and friends were there at the Air Force Base and then hopped aboard what is commonly known as Air Force One. But, of course, it's only called Air Force One technically when the sitting president of the United States is on board. But they headed home to Delaware at last thought. President Trump, meanwhile, enjoying a lunch inside the Capitol. Former Presidents Clinton, Bush, and Obama chose to skip that traditional luncheon this year. Surprise, surprise. And assumingly took off themselves. The inaugural parade is going to be starting in about 20 minutes or so. And so we'll keep track of events. If anything newsworthy pops up, we will, of course, break into the show here and let you know that. But right now, it is all systems go in terms of safety and that sort of thing. And thank goodness for that. Also going to be talking a little bit more about Martin Luther King Day, asking you, who do you think is a current civil rights leader in Wisconsin or in America? And we'll preview a little bit of the, yes, there is something else going on today, the national championship game for college football featuring The Ohio State University taking on Notre Dame tonight on ABC and ESPN. Big game tonight. But right now, at 12 minutes past the hour of 1 o'clock, time once again for What's Worse. Let's go.
This or that, this or that. Then, of course, the choice is yours. You can get with this or you can get with that. You can get with this or you can get with that.
Time once again for What's Worse. No money to give away, no prizes involved, but here. Well, what value can you really put on this? How often do you wake up and you say, I'd just like to tell somebody off? I wish I could tell people what I think. Well, here's your chance. It's your chance to be heard on 11 stations on our statewide radio network. Zombers, did you know we are the largest privately owned statewide radio network in the state of Wisconsin?
I did, in fact, know that.
Yes.
Since I work here.
But some people don't. We're in
Exactly.
We're in every major media market. It's a great opportunity to have your message be heard across the state of Wisconsin and around the world on the Civic Media app. If you don't have it, you can download it at your favorite app store on Apple or Android. Type in Civic, CIVIC, Media. It'll pop up a cute C and M logo. Click on that. Takes less than a minute to download, and it's free. It's what Gail King at CBS calls a deal. All right, here we go. Today's What Timely. Timely indeed, as Mike Lucas says. What's worse, super hot temperatures or super cold temperatures? What's worse, super hot temperatures or super cold temperatures? 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. Now, this is timely, of course, because we're going through this excessive cold warning here in Wisconsin. But there are people this time of year, Zommers, that I didn't know this until I talked to our friend Phil Nee at WRCO. He was calling a sporting event, a high school sports event last week. And he said one of the key players on this team, their family had decided to take a trip to Florida. And I guess some schools are off today for MLK Day, but it's not like there's any big spring break right now. And I mean, when I was in high school, I'm going to sound like the old man that I am. Spring break meant maybe cleaning the house. Maybe, going into Madison but I mean, we didn't take big Florida vacations, but now kids and families are leaving in the middle of winter to go to warmer temperatures, which, I mean, God love them. But I mean, so this is timely. So what's worse? Super hot temperatures for us in Wisconsin, mostly during the summer, or times like now, super cold temperatures. What's worse, super hot temperatures or super cold temperatures? 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Give us a call. I'll ask, but I know. What's worse, super hot temperatures or super cold temperatures?
This will shock zero regular listeners. Super hot temperatures are way worse because if I'm cold, I can put on more layers, move around, drink something hot. If I'm hot, there are only so many layers you can take off without getting arrested. And even then, it's still not enough.
You don't want to get arrested. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a tougher one for me because like days like today when it's I mean, even yesterday wasn't all that bad in Madison. I mean, it was cold, but as long as I've said this before, as long as the sun is out, but then when the winds pick up, that's when it gets. And now you get weather like this, and it's like you're even just to go into the grocery store, you're freezing, and got to warm up the car, and you got to wear all the layers of clothing. I don't know. So generally speaking, I would say super cold temperatures are worse for me because hot temperatures. Usually if I have shorts and a t-shirt on, or if you go to a store where it's air conditioned, you're fine. So we're gonna disagree on this one.
That's okay. It's all right to be wrong. I won't say which one of us is wrong.
I don't I don't know there's any wrong quote-unquote answer. It's just your opinion. What's worse, super hot temperatures or super cold temperatures? 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. What's worse, super hot temperatures or super cold temperatures? You have you have a newer car, right? It's starting okay and everything.
Newer than my previous car.
Right.
It now is at least from the 2010s.
Oh,
and
great.
Yes, it does. It was a little slow, but it started up. We were all good.
Yeah. It was a big family weekend this weekend. We were traveling around. So long story short, I ended up leaving my truck outside in Richland Center. And I went to start it yesterday, took right off. The old Dodge Ram took right off. So I'm very thankful for that. But what's worse, super hot temperatures or super cold temperatures? 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Let's go to Dick listening in Madison on WMDX. Dick, what's worse, super hot temperatures or super cold temperatures?
For me, it's super cold, and for an obvious reason, too. In the summer, when it's super hot, you can escape it with air conditioning. And another thing about super hot, sometimes the scenery's a little better in the summer.
There you go.
Of that.
Right? I agree. I mean, I was just saying to my mom this week, we were driving around, I said, I remember, again, sounding old, what this time of year, everything would be covered in white. And it was kind of pretty. But now it's just brown and cold.
The worst time of the year to me is in November, once all the leaves are down, in early December, and there's no snow.
Right.
You're devoid of any color.
Right, exactly. Dick, appreciate the call. Thank you so much. We'll come back with more of what's worse, super hot temperatures or super cold temperatures. It's the Allbaugh Show on Civic Media. Don't go anywhere.
News news and great conversation.
Personally, it's hard for me to enjoy the scenery of summer if I am passed out from heat exhaustion.
Guard responds, protects, and supports our nation when it needs them most. From fighting wildfires with air support, helping civilians in flooded neighborhoods, to delivering food and supplies to those who have lost everything, the Army National Guard always responds when disaster strikes. The Army National Guard also trains to be ever vigilant against threats, foreign and domestic. They protect our skies with missile defense weaponry. They secure our information, communications, and infrastructure with cybersecurity. And they protect us against chemical, biological, and radiological hazards with the civilian support team. The Army National Guard also stands ready to deploy and provide support for conflicts or humanitarian missions abroad. Join the Army National Guard and be there to respond, protect, and support your community and your country. Visit NationalGuard.com to learn more about part-time service. Sponsored by the Wisconsin Army National Guard. Aired by the Wisconsin Broadcasters Association and this station.
I'm Dan Schaefer. Let's recombobulate. In the first week of the new session of the Wisconsin State Legislature, Republicans fast-tracked a measure that would put a question on the ballot in the upcoming spring election that would enshrine voter ID in the state constitution. Two things on this. First, it is telling that Republicans made this their very first order of business. Senate Democratic leader Dianne Hesselbein responded to this saying it's not cost of living or health care or gun violence that Republicans wanted to focus on, but a constitution.
Having fun doing it. Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. 21 now past the hour of 12 noon, pardon me, past 1 o'clock. Was an hour behind. Story of my life, Summers. 21 past 1 o'clock on Monday, January 20th. The congressional luncheon now going on.
Surprised it's not McDonald's.
Right? Exactly. President Trump signing some orders into action here before he's going into the Capitol, a room there in the Capitol for the congressional luncheon again. Usually the former presidents stick around, but former presidents Clinton, Bush, and Obama saying, you know what? It's too cold. We're going to go home. And that's the question we ask you. What's worse this hour? What's worse, super hot or super cold temperatures? What's worse, super hot temperatures or super cold temperatures? 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Go up to beautiful Eau Claire, WCFW, The Tap, and Zeno calling on the line. And Zeno, what's worse, super cold or super hot?
Nah, it's got to be super cold. That's 100%, especially this morning.
Right?
Having to wake up that extra 30 minutes early just to start the car and hope that it's warm enough by the time you get in it.
Now, here's a question for you, because I never had it until my current vehicle. It's a 2016. I have that little thing on my key fob where I can stay inside and push it, and it will remote start. Do you have to go out and start your car?
Oh no, I'm not blessed with the remote start. I got the old-fashioned walk outside and race back in.
I had that until this last vehicle that I bought. Never had it before, but I remember. Yeah, you have to go out and now you got to worry about some yahoos. They're going to steal your car. So you either got to have like a second set, so you start it and lock it, or you got to stand there and like watch your car so some goofball doesn't come along and drive away with it.
Yeah, I got the 2 sets of keys for that.
Right? Do you work inside or do you work outside?
Luckily inside.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I think about all the poor folks that, whether it's a utility people or road construction. I mean, all these folks that are still working outside. Farmers, our ag producers. My grandparents were dairy farmers, and as it turns out, the cows still have to be milked, whether it's 13 or 30 below or 90 degrees. They don't wait. As it turns out, they don't hold it for you.
No, yep. The world doesn't pause for cold.
Well, I appreciate the call, Zio. Thank you so much. Appreciate it up there, beautiful Eau Claire. 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. What's worse, super hot temperatures or super cold temperatures?
It seems like I'm in the minority on this one, but I am going to say because it's winter, there's probably a little bit of bias.
True, but I now here's some people on your side off the text line, Zombers. WMDX listener, Luann in Waterloo. Luann says, I agree with Zombers for exactly the same reasons. So there's some love for you. And Kimber out in beautiful Muscatine listening to WRCE in Richland Center says, I agree. You're wrong, Todd. So there you go. There's a couple of votes for super hot is actually worse. What's worse, super hot temperatures or super cold temperatures? Super hot. Wow. Where did you get that at?
There's a video game called Super Hot, and whenever you finish a level, it just goes super hot. And so I thought that would be fun.
855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. Also, Jim listening from on WISS in Oshkosh, but Jim in Appleton says, hot is much worse. I wholeheartedly agree with Aaron. I spent too many years working in a mill that was always 20 to 30 degrees hotter than the outside temperature. Well, there you go.
Yeah, I used to work in a foundry, thankfully third shift, but still over the summer it was very hot in there.
Right.
And yeah, that was unpleasant.
That's another great point, that a lot of people that work in industry, they don't have the luxury of having air conditioning. So yeah, super hot is definitely worse. Asking the question, what's worse, super hot temperatures or super cold temperatures? Text us on the Civic Media app or call us 855-752-4842. Len, listening on WMDX here in Madison, says, I find super hot temperatures are worse, though for mankind in general, it's pretty much a draw based on their existence in those extreme climates. All right, very good. Also a listener on WAUK Milwaukee saying super hot is worse. So there you go, Zombers. After a slow start, your allies have come to your rescue.
And I thank the people of Wisconsin for agreeing with me about preferred temperatures.
Yes. What's worse, super hot temperatures or super cold temperatures? 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. Also, as we said, are you working outside right now? Let us know. Or do you have to go outside a lot during temperatures like this? Because, again, depending upon the person, I mean, again, I think about my grandparents farming. I guess there were things that, if you get extreme temperatures on either end, dairy cows don't produce as well. So that can have an effect on it. Boy, putting up hay in the summer, you come out of the hay mow and it looks like you were just standing in the shower. You're sweating, you're dripping sweat. So in the summer, it was always better to have cooler temperatures if you're putting up hay. But if you're cleaning the barn or milking cows, or if you're, as you and the listener said, you're in industry, a foundry or work in some kind of industry like that, mechanical industry, and you're in a big building that doesn't have HVAC, boy, as the listener said, it gets pretty darn hot if you don't have air conditioning. Yeah, a little toasty. So cooler weather is better on that. Well, this was a good one. We'll have more of these, of course, every day in our second hour. What's worse? You can follow along. Always call in as well. 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. Or text us. Continue to text us on what's worse, super hot temperatures or super cool temperatures. Again, it's close. But for me, I'm going to respectfully disagree with Zommers. I'm going to say super cold is worse.
And yep, that's all right. There's good reasons for both.
There are good reasons for both. Quick update for you on what's happening out in Washington, D.C. The congressional luncheon continues right now at this hour. The pomp and circumstance continues. No major breaking news. If something happens here in the next half hour, we'll let you know. Of course, the rest of our great Civic Media staff will continue to cover the events throughout the day. Come on back. We're going to talk a little MLK Day and college baseball, college football as well. National championship tonight between The Ohio State University and Notre Dame. It's the Allbaugh Show for a Monday on the Civic Media Radio.
Welcome to Madison's Real News and Great Conversation, 92.7 WMDX. Your news, conversations, and a whole lot of fun. It's all on your local Civic Media radio station or the Civic Media app.
Did you hear the thing that Trump said last night about?
I did not. No.
Okay.
That's why I didn't comment on it.
This is him talking about Elon Musk after he was up on stage.
And then he journeyed to Pennsylvania, where he spent like a month and a half campaigning for me in Pennsylvania. And he's a popular guy, and he was very effective. And he knows those computers better than anybody, all those computers, those vote counting computers. And we ended up winning Pennsylvania like in a landslide. So it was pretty good. It was pretty good. So thank you to Elon.
Meanwhile, Middleton has opened warning signs.
So he didn't explicitly admit to cheating, but he heavily implied it.
Right.
They'll be back open tomorrow. Today, people can still stay warm at the police department and the fire department. This is the kind of weather where pipes can freeze fast and burst. Meteorologist Brittany Merlot has more on what you should do to prevent that in your home.
One mistake people make is not having the heat high enough in your house. The thermostat needs to be set in the mid-60s at least, and even when you're not home. Crews during the past cold snap are running at full capacity with pipes already breaking. So, it's important to be prepared. Close gaps around doors and windows. Don't let drafts in. Experts suggest pipe insulation or foam, and let small drops of water drip from your faucet. It helps reduce the pressure and helps prevent freezing pipes. And if you do wind up with a frozen pipe, shut the water off and thaw it out. Space heaters are efficient, but it's important to use them safely and to make sure that they're monitored and away from flammable materials.
And I've seen more and more of them at the curb these last few days. Remember, if you still have your Christmas tree, this is your last chance to have it picked up. The Madison Streets Division will have crews grabbing them all week starting tomorrow because today's a federal holiday. You can set your tree out at the curb and they may pick it up with your garbage this week. For more on all our shows, you can head to WMDXradio.com. I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. You're listening to 92.7 WMDX News.
On your entertainment beat, I'm Pete Schwaba. The third installment of the 28 Days franchise, titled 28 Years Later, opens in June 2025. Sources say despite the new chapter's $75 million budget, part of the new film was shot on an iPhone 15. This would make 28 Years Later the most expensive film ever to use smartphone technology, at least for cinematic purposes. We've come a long way since movies used to use flip phones. Just a little over a year ago, in late 2023, Norman Lear was being praised by everyone in Hollywood after his death at 101 years old. But Sally Struthers, who played Gloria on All in the Family, says that she was not a huge fan of Lear. During a recent appearance on the Let's Talk About That podcast, the two-time Emmy winner says Lear told her she was only cast because she had blue eyes and a fat face like Carol O'Connor, who played her father, Archie Bunker, on the show. Words hurt, even with 2 Emmys and a big bank account. For more showbiz fun, tune into Nightlight with me, Pete Schwaba, weeknights from 6 to 8 p.m. on the Civic Media Radio Network.
You can always continue the conversation on social media. Share your thoughts when you find and follow Civic Media on Facebook, X, and Instagram.
With high temperatures barely climbing above zero and winds whipping out of the northwest, it's creating dangerous wind chills, where highs today are really feeling more like 25 below. A cold weather advisory is in effect now and switches to an extreme cold warning overnight tonight. We're to be feeling 40 below. I'm meteorologist Brittany Merlot. Currently, it's 1 degree.
Nightlight with Pete Schwaba.
Mike Siegel. Hey, Mike.
When I look back on all those years on the road and going on 2-lane highways in northern Wisconsin, in the dead of winter, it could have been like 10 below outside. One deer jumps out in front of me. I was like, I'm done here.
You're in a ditch and they're not going to find you for 3 days. Dead deer carcass over there and a dead comedian carcass.
Holding his date book.
Somebody might want to call and cancel him at Zany's next week in Chicago.
Nightlight with Pete Schwaba. Weeknights from 6 till 8 on your local Civic Media radio station and on the Civic Media app.
Are you prepared for an emergency or disaster? Because it's not a matter of if, but when. Don't find yourself saying,
when the storm rolls in, my time to find a pet-friendly evacuation center will have run out.
The scorching heat wave will leave me powerless to
seconds.
cool my insulin.
I'll face it.
Perfectly than to have a world party on the day you came to be. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. 34 now past the hour of 1 o'clock on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Happy birthday. Well done, Mr. Zommers there. It is MLK Day, of course, being overshadowed a bit by the inauguration events happening out in Washington, D.C. today. But I thought it was important to take and appreciate Matt Flynn earlier on the show, giving his remembrance. As someone who lived, I think what he said, he was 21, I believe, when MLK was assassinated.
Yeah, that's what he said.
So as someone who lived through that time, I thought it was important to have his reflections on that and always appreciate Matt Flynn's perspective. I want to bring you a story from the Wausau Pilot and Review. Headline, more Northwest Wisconsin schools are letting students off for the King holiday, but many still do not. Says here, this was originally by Robin Washington from Wisconsin Public Radio. Martin Luther King Jr. Day has been a national holiday since it was signed into law by former President. You want to guess, Mr. Zommers? Who signed the law making today a federal holiday?
Abraham Lincoln. No, I'm kidding. I'm just going to say Bill Clinton.
It's a good guess. It's a very good guess. This will surprise people, at least some people. The law making today a national holiday was signed into law 41 years ago in 1986 by former President Ronald Wilson Reagan.
At first, I was going to say Reagan, and I was like, I'm going to push a little farther forward.
Yeah.
But no, I should have gone with my gut.
Yeah, very good. It's a day off for students in major school districts around the country, but not necessarily in Northwest Wisconsin. In 2023, and just this year, Wisconsin Public Radio surveyed districts in the area. Of 44 school districts tallied in 2023, 15 were closed on the holiday and 29 remained open. Now, in 2025, the numbers are nearly reversed, with 26 districts granting students the day off and 16 remaining open. This does not mean that districts that remain open aren't observing the holiday in some way, said State Superintendent Jill Underley. Quote, what matters most is that schools take the time to really educate students about Martin Luther King Jr. and the contributions he made, she said. Underley discussed the issue with Wisconsin Public Radio's Robert Washington on the morning edition. Washington also spoke with Joshua Hetfeld, the district administrator for the Webster School District, which is among those that were previously open but will be closed this year. And, goes through the context here. Curious to know, in your part of the state, Wisconsin, is your local school open today or is it closed? And perhaps more importantly, or at least as importantly, who do you see in the state of Wisconsin, in your local community or nationally, that could be the next advocate? Maybe, let's be clear. There will never be another Martin Luther King Jr. Just won't be. He was a unique figure. One of one, as they say. But who is currently, and sometimes I think that the small but very important things going on in our local communities are overshadowed by all of us wanting this large national figure. So is there somebody in your community across the state of Wisconsin who is doing what they can, their part to educate, to lift up, to shed light on history, raising up civil rights in your community? Give us a call, 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Who do you think in Wisconsin is leading the way on civil rights, or just rights in general. But appropriate to pause, reflect on this Martin Luther King Day. I know our colleague Earl Ingram played some of Dr. King's, one of Dr. King's earlier speeches today on his program. Had a good discussion there. And I always think the important thing is that we keep these things alive, that we do talk about it, that we do raise it. What's going on in your community across the state of Wisconsin? 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Zommers, of course, when I was in school, it just wasn't observed the way that it is now, unfortunately. And I think it's good that the state of Wisconsin and that more and more schools now are giving it the day off and giving it the proper recognition that it deserves.
I know when I was little, we didn't have the day off. We did, though, spend a lot of time in class, if not most of the day, talking about it, about his legacy and things like that. As I got older, I don't remember if they ended up taking the day off or not. But I know when you're no longer in like elementary school,
right,
it's a little harder to make sure everyone's on the same page of teaching about that on that day.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Martin Luther King Day? And as importantly, what's happening in your community across the state of Wisconsin? Either today, does your district, do local governments close down to observe the holiday? And really what's happening in terms of your community leaders, our community leaders across the state of Wisconsin, as far as doing something to educate and to advance civil rights in the state of Wisconsin? 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Cindy calling in from Appleton, Wisconsin. Cindy, always appreciate it. What say you?
Well, I say we let the memory of Martin Luther King live and the memory of Pinocchio, as soon as he's gone, die a sudden death. But I know Appleton and Menasha schools are both closed today. And as far as leaders in the community, I know there's many of them here that do their part to educate and keep that memory of Dr. King alive.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Lawrence University is doing some type of celebration tonight. I'm not sure if we'll get out, though. I'm under the weather, and it's so cold. So
There's a lot of people, Cindy,
year.
under the weather. There's some crud sweeping through civic media. Zommers and I, we live in a bubble, and so we haven't been affected yet, knock on wood.
Somehow.
Right. But thoughts go out to you. There's a lot of people fighting stuff right now, so take care of yourself. But thanks for taking the time to listen and call in, Cindy. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep. Have a great day. So there you go. Your alma mater, Mr. Zommers.
Indeed.
Lawrence University doing a little program.
I'll have to look and see what's going on. Yes, let's see. At 6 p.m., they have the Fox Cities MLK celebration, which is a community-wide event at Memorial Chapel. So if you are in or near Appleton and you want to go check out what they're doing, it's at 6 p.m. at Lawrence University Memorial Chapel.
There you go. See, right there. Thank you, Cindy. We appreciate you giving us the heads up on that. For all of our listeners in the Fox Valley on WISS or perhaps WGBW, great station out of Green Bay. What is your local community doing to observe Martin Luther King Day? Who are the leaders in your community? Who is kind of the next leader that you see advancing civil rights in the state of Wisconsin and across the country? 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. It's a great example Cindy gave us there. If you just stop and look around, as Yogi Berra used to say, you can see a lot just by looking around, right? So yeah, that's a great call and a great example of what's going on locally. That's, again, the kind of stuff we want to do more in 2025. Uplift. We should almost like get back at the old home station at RCO. They still do it. It's called Community Calendar. And so people will write in and say what's happening in the community. We call it out.
That could be something interesting to bring up. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we start doing an Allbaugh Show community calendar, letting us know what's happening around the state. Can't always get to all of them, but we'll do our best. If you have a suggestion, let us know.
You know somebody that I have my eye on as a community leader?
Who?
Jeff Wright happens to be a candidate for state superintendent of public instruction, but we had him on the show last week. Yeah, on Thursday. And I was struck by the way he not just talks about bringing everybody to the table, but has so far in his education career brought everybody to the table in the community.
Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that up. And you're absolutely right. Jeff Wright, who is one of 3 candidates vying for the state school superintendent position, currently the district administrator in Sauk City, Prairie du Sac area, Sauk County. And if you notice that entire half-hour interview we had with him last week, he never said one negative thing about someone.
He did not. You're right.
I mean, it was a half. I mean, isn't that remarkable that oh my gosh, a candidate for political office that always does is be positive about facing issues like childcare and housing and education, and he does it with positivity and working across party lines.
The closest thing to saying something negative was when he admitted that he had been wrong about things, and he's like, I didn't even think about that until this student of mine brought it to my attention.
Yeah, there you go. Well, it's an important thing, and we're going to keep covering this throughout the year. But if you, before the show ends, if you have a community celebration, or if you have someone in your community or an organization that's lifting up rights of other people, of civil rights, give us a call, 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842, or you can text us on the Civic Media app. Continue to monitor things in Washington. Again, the presidential inauguration is still going on. We expected that the parade would be happening or be launching underway by now, but of course, everything's kind of pushed back because of the weather and other things. But if there's anything remarkable going on, newsworthy, we will certainly bring it to you here. Want to get to one other thing, kind of tangentially, because just because we said that we would. Tangentially connected with the election here, and I was struck by this, Summers. We've kind of joked around about it. TikTok, if you haven't heard of it, it's a social media platform like Facebook and Twitter, X. TikTok, a lot of people use this. It's short videos predominantly, but holy cow! So what happened was, of course, Congress passed a bill bipartisanly. President Biden signed it into law, and the Supreme Court over the weekend upheld that, saying that the ban TikTok unless it was divested of its Chinese ownership, because the fear is that anything that's owned in China is ultimately overseen by the communist Chinese government, and it makes it really easy for the Chinese government to spy on us, to use our contacts, and to influence us. And then over the weekend, President Biden said, look, I'm not going to enforce this. I'm going to wait for Trump to come in and let him decide. And then the Chinese government said, oh, time out. We're just going to preemptively shut it down. And people lost their minds this weekend. I was struck just to, like, in our civic media chats, people were just freaking out.
I was surprised it actually happened, but I guess shutting it down is their best play, especially because the company also owns some other popular apps, including the hit game Marvel Snap.
Oh, Marvel Snap.
Yeah, it's also owned in a more roundabout way by, what was the name? Byte?
I don't know. Oh,
something?
yeah.
Yeah, that
The
Chinese
parent
company.
yeah.
And Marvel, owned by Disney. Shutting down a Disney app in the U.S. is a surefire way to get the mouse on the government's back.
Absolutely. So anyway, Trump then put out a statement saying, look, I want to bring this back. I'm going to save it. And suddenly, miraculously, they turned it back on yesterday. And now Trump's taking credit for it. Go ahead.
He also used to talk about, we need to ban TikTok. We got to get it out of China.
Well, yeah, of course. But then he made the deal with the tech bros, and the CEO of TikTok was there, at the inauguration. My youngest godson, Jason, I think had the best take on this over the weekend, and he's all of, a couple of days he's gonna turn 25. He said in the group family chat here, he said, "I just find it hilarious. People are so attached to social media," unquote.
Yeah.
And from a 25-year-old, I thought that was pretty good. And I think it's a great reminder. I mean, look, if they ever shut down Twitter, I use that as my aggregator for news sources. I'd be a little lost. But I think the point is well taken that all of us need to do better, including myself this year, in reconnecting with people and not screens.
Use our technology to maybe video chat with somebody who you can't go see in person easily.
Right. Yeah. Do something like that. Or, yeah, if you're able to, just go and see a real person. Because, that's spending time. I went to a roller derby this weekend, by the way.
You did?
I did. That was fantastic. That's a full contact sport, let me tell you. We're going to come back, have some thoughts on what do you have, past or present, and also look at the national championship game tonight. It's the Todd Allbaugh Show for Monday on the Civic Media Radio Network.
News and great conversation. 92.7 WMDX.
Hey folks, this is Carrie Joy with your Work Money Minute. We have all stopped at a convenience store for a necessity or two. A bottle of water, a half a gallon of milk, or a bag of pickle-flavored potato chips. I mean, those are necessities in your house too, right? But there is a cost for that kind of convenience, as much as 54% more. Now, when I was in my early 20s, like some of you, I may have done most of my shopping at the 7-Eleven around the corner from my apartment. And boy, oh boy, I wish I had known that shopping regularly at convenience stores instead of supermarkets meant I was paying a lot more for my groceries. A National Institute of Health survey recently found that milk can cost 11 to 14% more at those stores. Apples and bananas 10 to 53% more. And cereal can cost as much as 54% more. So, for your regular food shopping, keep more money in your wallet and head on over to the supermarket. For more tips on saving, text MONEY to 88285. This is Carrie Joy saying take good care.
Attention. If you suffer from consistent pain in your joints caused by arthritis, overuse, or injury, you may be a candidate for a revolutionary therapy that could revitalize damaged tissue. This approach can provide long-lasting relief from pain in your knees, shoulders, hips, and other joints with no surgery, no drugs, and no downtime. To find out if you're a viable candidate, you may request a free consultation from QC Kinetics by calling 608-384-0897. Instead of masking the symptoms, it goes to the root of the...
Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. It is 9 before the hour of 2 o'clock. At the top of the hour, ABC and CBS News Radio, depending upon which of our great stations across the state of Wisconsin you're listening to. A sports update with our great sports reporter, Mike Clemens. Did you watch any of the NFL playoffs over the weekend, Zommers?
I did not.
The Philadelphia Eagles are in the NFC Championship game, as are the Washington Commanders. So that's very interesting. And on the other side, the AFC side, it will be the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Buffalo Bills. So that is your Final Four. Detroit. I said this, didn't I, earlier in the season? I said this team is running on adrenaline and at some point is going to run out. And then I bought in and said, well, maybe not. And then, of course, it did.
Got to stick to your gut.
Got to stick to your gut. So there's your Final Four of the NFL playoffs for the AFC and NFC Championship game tonight on ESPN and ABC. It is The Ohio State University, 13-2, taking on Notre Dame, 14-1 for the national championship game. Broadcast at least, I think, around 6:30 tonight. Kickoff probably closer to 7, but should be a lot of festivities. I know I should be rooting for Ohio State because they're Big Ten, but I really like Marcus Freeman, the coach of Notre Dame. And as it turns out, we don't have time to get into this, but a lot of the people Marcus Freeman was one of the coordinators at Cincinnati for Luke Fickell when he was the head coach there. And they went to the Final Four playoffs. And it turns out that not only Marcus Freeman, but a lot of the current Notre Dame staff are made up of that Fickell staff from Cincinnati. And it gives me pause as a Badger fan to wonder, was the brains of the operation at Cincinnati really Luke Fickell, or was it his staff with guys like Marcus Freeman?
Well,
So-
a lot of people I know have another name, another way to pronounce Luke Fickle's last name, maybe switching out some vowels. And so they would say that he was not the brain.
So anyway, I'm rooting for Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman, I think, tonight. So I'm looking forward to that. What else do we have? I guess I want to get into kind of finish off with a little piece here as we round out today's broadcast covering the inauguration. Ask yourself, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Science tells us that question is a clever political ploy that you too can use. It works because our memories are both short and bad. The faults with our memory lead us to forget how things really were in even the recent past. If you feel your past was better than your present, you're not alone. 6 in 10 Americans said life was better for people like them 50 years ago, according to a recent Pew Research survey. Aliens visiting Earth would look at our media and figure life must have been better in before times. Radios play old songs, TV is reruns, and movies are sequels. Online memes tell us that living standards for the American family have gotten worse since the 1950s. When asked if life was better a mere 4 years ago, the American electorate said yes in 1980 and again in 2024. Nostalgia politics works because we take for granted our economic, scientific, and social progress. Look at your cell phone or computer. Did the richest person on the planet have your technology a decade ago? Are your vehicle and home safer and more comfortable than your last one? Are you better educated than your parents? Are women working? Are people of color advancing? Are more gays out of the closet? Are people with disabilities gaining access? So why is the longing for the past so persistent? Why is the sentiment so widespread that things were better in the old days? Brian Walsh, writing for Vox, attributes it in part to our expectations. When things improve, say with rapid vaccines that end a global pandemic, we don't stay grateful. Instead, we forget the past and now accept that vaccines should always be fast and effective. If that doesn't happen next time, it proves that life was better before. It's called selective memory. We forget negative events of the past. We double down on positive memories. It's why gambling can be addictive. We forget the times we lost. We'll remember the times we won. Another way our brains deceive us is called loss aversion. We fear change. Things won't turn out well. We feel comforted by the time before change. It's called the past. Finally, when asked about the past, each of us thinks of our past selves. We yearn for our younger days before the losses and setbacks that come with life. We know we can't turn back the clock, but the human experience tells us that we will forever wish it were so. Little thought for you as we move into another 4 years. I don't know what the next 4 years is going to hold. I'm not particularly optimistic when it comes to politics, but on this day, in this moment, I can simply say that once again, after almost 250 years, by the grace of God and the great people, the men and women across this country, we did have a peaceful transition of power. What comes next, we shall see. But we will be here every day, and we'll get through it together, pursuing truth wherever it may lead, and having fun doing it. Many thanks to Matt Flynn for being on the show today. Mr. Zommers, all of you for listening. Stay tuned. Maggie Dawn is next. No matter what you're fighting for, whatever you believe in, do not give up. Keep banging your drum. We'll see you tomorrow.
Banging on your drum, keep banging on, and your day will come. Keep banging on your drum, and they will hear you.
thanks, everybody. We appreciate you. Hopefully we'll be back on our show page streaming tomorrow.
Yep.
If not,
Thank you, Zuck.
yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Adios.